Some of the other things that I want to make sure that no matter who builds it, or if we go to option, I don't even know which option it is, Captain's builds it, I don't want to see the county up front spending money and then being reimbursed. Is that part in the lease, or is that, I don't want to see, it's just not a normal thing that I've seen in construction.
Mr. Mullins, I can't think of anything in the new lease
In the new lease.
that obligates us to expend upfront all the costs of, I'm just thinking out loud here, because it's a pretty long document. I think it's like 30 pages. All of the costs of the assessment of the South Peninsula, the design, the permitting, the construction, the studies, the engineering, all of that stuff is at their expense. There might, I'm trying to think, there might be something that, well, we obviously have to use our processes. So in other words, they've got to apply for a site plan. They got to apply for a building permit. So our folks will be handling that. But again, there are fees associated with captains having to use our processes, whether it's for a building permit or a site plan, et cetera. But I cannot think of any.
The additional insurance would be the only one. If we would have to purchase as the owner some additional policy.
Yeah, but we have oh, that's right, but it's reimbursed to us. It's a pass-through.
That's the only one.
That's right. In case we have to buy additional insurance, but the lease provides that we're reimbursed for whatever that cost is, in keeping with the triple net principle that we're applying.
Okay. I want to say this too, and this is really to the other commissioners and to the individuals out there, you know, and the attorney. I haven't any ownership in this decision. I haven't made one. I wasn't able to. If you guys recount, this was rushed, in my opinion. It was that night I came up, I asked them to hold off and wait. I've never seen a lease get as signed as quick as this one did. If we could do business this way through the county, we'd have one of the strongest economies in the state of Florida getting stuff approved. I want to see us move slow with this. As far as a lease approved, I don't think it needs to be the Friday before a Monday that I take office like it was. I'm agitated that I'm even looking at all this stuff. And it's reality, it's here. There is liability in it. I've done real estate all my life. There is liability in it once a lease is signed. We have an obligation. I came into office, I immediately pushed that we talk about this more. I think that both parties have been very good at sitting back at the table and discussing it. I think that we have some options out here on the board that I think, hearing the Hammock side, that they've certainly moved positions since day one of absolutely not wanting to see anything occur. I see a location that's a lot better than if we hadn't have done what we've done. That building would probably be almost built by now. So there has been a lot of progress made in this by both sides. You know, I'm looking at it and I'm trying to figure out the way that I would go about this path, and I scratch my head on it continually. I don't know that in a year from now we're going to be any better decision than we are today. I think that enough has gone on. I think that we have waffled around with it. I've said the word beans more than I thought I'd do in my lifetime, and I've talked more about barbecue than I have eaten it in my lifetime. And I'm from the South. I love barbecue. But I think that the decision needs to be made one way or the other. And I think that as far as deciding who builds it's the question here, in my opinion. And then I think there's some details that need to be looked at slowly going into a lease. I don't think we need to have another record lease signing here. But I definitely think this topic needs to be resolved today. I think it's something that we've got to make a decision, that lives have been impacted on both sides. And we have been here dragging it down, and I don't know that we're going to come up with any different solution a year from now, a month from now. I've done what I can. I've worked on it as hard as I could, and seeing the legal part of it, I just, I would love to not even be making this decision. I don't think that the county should, in my personal opinion, the county shouldn't be doing what private businesses are doing. But we're here, and we've got a private industry should be doing. We're here, and we've got to address it. But I think both parties, again, I'll finish up and say this, both parties have come to the table and made some concessions, and I think it's time to make a decision one way or the other and move forward in this lifetime. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I have an amendment to a response to Mr. Mullins that was pointed out to me by somebody scanning through the lease. There is another point where we spend and they reimburse, and that's for the construction materials. That is in the lease.
But-
We acquire the construction materials and they reimburse us.
Okay, so why are we're buying construction material? If they choose to build it and we approve it, we're buying construction material?
Yes, and they're
Why?
reimbursing. I mean, because I imagine the county can get a better price.
We have to have order, folks. Anything else, Commissioner?
No, that's all.
Okay, Commissioners?
Yeah, I'd like to get cleared up this ESL issue kind of once and for all, because I've read it and I don't see any prohibition to building, but I'm not a lawyer. So, Mr. Hadid, can we or can we not build a building on ESL lands?
Yes, you may do so. You have to be mindful of whatever the management plans or grant agreements or any kind of provisions that govern a property or a comprehensive plan provision of the role of the particular ESL property. The answer is different depending upon what the property is. Mr. Telfer Mr. Telfer is our land manager. He is the individual responsible for administering our ESL program. So I have to defer to his judgment, but he has provided Mr. Cameron and myself his opinion that the reconstruction of the restaurant on the South Peninsula does not, given the history, given the fact that there was a concession operating at the time that we bought the property and the function of the property was access to the intercoastal, not environmental preservation of resources. Although the county did engage in that later, most certainly because of the preservation of the oak trees, et cetera. There was a previous plan to install lighted tennis courts there. That was one proposal by the parks director at the time in the late 1980s, which was rejected by the county commission. So provided that the restaurant is not of a scale or size that it completely overwhelms the park and the park becomes a restaurant, in other words, not being able to accommodate the other public uses, Mr. Telfer's conclusion is it does not violate the ESL program.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if I may, there is different personalities for different portions of that park. The southern portion is essentially pristine and has walking trails there. At some point, we altered the management plan to add parking in that area. I think that it may be appropriate for you to consider instructing us to revise that management plan to eliminate any parking in that pristine area.
Let me give Mr. Erickson.
Oh, yeah.
a chance. Commissioner Erickson?
I share some of David's comments about the strength of that particular piece of land there. I too have walked that numerous times. The concrete's walls are broken and cracked. There's no telling, is there sufficient dirt under there if we're going to put pylons down there to build the building on? I'd at least expect someone to have tried something already? I mean, since it's just drilling down through dirt, how far is it going to go, or is it going to be a problem? I don't want a restaurant floating away.
Commissioner, during the approval process for the building itself, they would have to have engineering done to accommodate that. That is fill land. The last discussion I had, they were contemplating using helical piling. That is usually driven down if they can find a hard surface, which I'm told is there, till it hits it. But helical piling in and of itself has load-bearing capacity, even if it doesn't find a hard
solid bottom.
surface under there. So those questions are questions that will have to be answered during design and engineering before they would get approval to build that building.
Who pays for that? Who's
They do.
responsible? They,
Yes,
who's they?
the captains.
Captains, okay.
Anything else, Commissioner Erickson?
And also, again, this would be a 3-year rebuild type situation. That seems like an awful long time to
That's an up to, that's a cannot exceed.
cannot exceed. Right, right, no, I understood that.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I did have that one question that didn't get answered. Remember, that was when we started this. And that was, if you go to Section 8 under rent, I guess I'll have to make it very specific. In the 6th year of the new building being in existence, in other words, 6 years from the date of the COO, and Captains writes a check to the county to pay the rent, what will the number on that check be? Will it be 1,000 or 4,000?
Captain's is Jay Livingston here on behalf of Captain's Barbecue. Captain's building the building and financing the construction. Assuming that we get into the building by January 1st of 2021, it's 248 months under the lease extension. The building costs $1 million, excluding the financing costs. That's $4,032 a month, an additional advanced rent that we're giving you with this building. You add in the financing costs, it's going to be about $8,000 per month that we're going to be paying for the building that's going to be yours. So that's the additional rent. If you want to build the building, then you can raise the rent to an appropriate
So
amount.
the answer is 1,000
Yes,
plus
sir.
3%.
Yes, sir. Because you're ignoring the fact that we're building the building and giving it to you.
I don't have a great memory, but my memory on this was that after the 5 years, after you assume possession of the building, the rent would go up at that point to 4,000. But I'm going to stick with that point, and it's not in the lease right now. That's what I'm.
No, the way
basic-
it's written in the lease now is that it's
1,000 plus
adjusted
3%.
at the reduced rent. The exact language is, let's see, rent.
And while he's looking for that, just to let the record show that all the references to the amount of the lease payment is the monthly lease payment.
Right.
Yes.
Some have inadvertently said other words.
So essentially, we're paying the interest on the loan the captain gets.
What do you mean?
That's by not paying the full
So you
value of the rent after 5 years, we're helping defray the cost of the financing.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to say this real quick, and this is in general. We do a lot of triple net leases with my company, and we build a lot of out parcels. This is the way you've got to look at this is a ground lease. We do a ground lease. Ruby Tuesdays is an example. I just did one. We did a ground lease for a certain amount of dollars per month, and I won't disclose that because I don't have their permission, but it was pretty hefty. They turned around, built the building. They were 100% responsible for everything. We don't touch it. We don't go near it. But we do have provisions where it goes up over time. Now, it's not a privilege that they built that building on our property. We gave them the right to do it. If they go out of business or they move, that building defaults back to us. It's a normal thing that you do in shopping centers. So this isn't uncommon. I think that the way of looking at it is the building has got to be built anyway. Either we do it or they do it, but in a triple net lease or a ground lease, this is normal to set in a certain price for a length of time. I'm not going to say I've given this kind of pricing, but we do have some provisions in some of them where it escalates over time. So this is a normal business.
Yeah, and this one does escalate. After the 5th year, every year it goes up 3% off the original 1,000. Excuse me? No, thereafter, the amount of the $1,000 monthly rent payment in the 6th year and thereafter shall be adjusted annually by 3% of the remaining term of the 2,000. So every year it shall go up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Does that address your question?
Let me ask Jay one other question real quick. In there, I haven't been able to read it, but this is another thing that's very important when we do properties, a transfer. If a business decides to move, relocate, leave, or sell that asset, it has to be approved by us. In the current lease that you provided, do we have that provision where the county has to approve the purchase?
In terms of an approval of a sale of the assets or the business?
Yeah.
No, sir, there's no provisions in there
Okay.
that address that concern.
But the building is not an asset of the business.
No, I understand, but if they go to sell the business
But
to
the
another.
lease is non-transferable.
The lease is,
Well, it's transferable with our approval.
There is no assignment clause in the lease,
Right.
unilateral assignment clause in the lease.
Right.
So yes, it would have to get your approval.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. Thank you.
Yes.
So we'd have to approve it.
Yeah.
Can I just respond to a couple of lease questions real quick? There's nothing that would prevent them from selling a majority interest in their business to a third party, though. That's so they could do that and basically be the same entity, different investors. On the lease, you go and pay it through 2041. They're going to be paying about $1,300 a month. You will be receiving a building at the end of the lease that's, 25 years old. Roof will need to be replaced. Useful life of the roof will be over. So you're really subsidizing it. And at the end, you may end up with a building that's flooded 3 or 4 times because of storm events and things of that sort. So that issue on the lease. The other point on the lease, again, we don't have the latest version of it. We haven't received the marked up version. It happened over the weekend. But it doesn't say no liquor license. And they can buy one. Going price, $175,000, $200,000 for a liquor license, regardless how many seats that you have. You've got a provision in there, $1 million in liability for liquor liability. A drunken boater pulls out of there, runs into another boat. I guarantee you the county's going to be on the hook for a lot more than $1 million. So I would suggest you look at those issues as well.
Oh, and my apologies, I meant to address that. There's a specific type of liquor license we're talking about. It's called a quota license. It's regulated under both the Chapter 500 statute as well as Rule 61A-50105 of the Administrative Code. We have no problem with there being a prohibition in the lease against a quota license. There's no desire for us to go buy a quota license, nor was there ever been. Actually, it was stated several times here at the podium before the planning board, at A1A when I presented this originally, and at the TRC. So if we need to have a no quota liquor license provision in the lease, that's not a problem because that's not our intention. And as far as the liability, whether you're serving beer and wine or beer, wine, and liquor, it's a dram shop insurance policy. There is no differences between they only have liquor or they have wine and beer. It's just a dram shop policy. That's in the lease, and that will be there because we already are serving beer and wine, and we will continue to do so in the new locations.
All right. We need to move this along here. So, Commissioners, if there's no other substantive discussion at this point, I'm going to open this up to public comment. Is that okay? Yep. Okay. Again, we'll have public comment, 3 minutes. State your name, and be courteous, folks, to everyone. And we really need to refrain from the clapping and cajoling and all of that. It wastes time, and it can be disrespectful if you're not on that side of it. And our rules do not call for that. So thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mr. Chairman. I'm Joy Ellis. I live in the Hammock. I am here representing more than 2,200 people who have signed petitions against the expansion of Captain's Barbecue in Bing's Landing. I'm wearing green, as well as many of the opposition in your audience. I also want to say that there are a lot of people who could not be here because of their work schedule or because they go elsewhere in the summer. So there is additional support. There is widespread opposition to Captain's building a new building in Bing's Landing Park. I don't envy your job. It's a really difficult one. I am glad that I'm not the only person who spent my weekend studying that lease. So I appreciate that Commissioner Sullivan has done so. I think it's important that you see an updated lease before even considering approving it. And I appreciate the concept of improving the space where that restaurant might possibly want to be located, and the fact that that would give you adequate time to review thoroughly something that was marked up over the weekend. It's really important. I know we are tired of working on this issue. Everybody's tired of it. It's kind of taken over our lives. But that doesn't mean that we can be relieved or you can be relieved of the responsibility to make a good decision. Don't rush now because you're tired of it. I understand that. I'm tired of it too. But you need to see that revised lease. You need to know whether this property is buildable or not. You need to repair the seawall. Please at least consider the HCA proposal that says that we prefer that you build it and have control and responsibility over an asset, the management of an asset that was purchased with ESL funds. Thank you so much. I do appreciate your effort in this regard. Oh, I want to say that in 2041, the lease amount per month would be $1,344.
Thank you, Ms. Christie. One point of clarification. Everyone on this dais, all the commissioners received the lease, and I trust that I can assure you that Mr. Sullivan is not the only one that read and studied the lease, and I'm pretty sure my fellow commissioners have done the same thing.
I appreciate that. I think having the marked up lease is an important thing for you to see.
Okay.
My name is Edith Campins, and I have a few questions for you. First of all, it is my understanding that Bing's or Captain's Barbecue is currently in violation of the existing lease. If that is the case, using that as a predictor of future behavior, I have no confidence that whatever is finally agreed upon, they're going to adhere to. That's a big concern. And why we haven't acted on violations of the existing lease is kind of beyond me. Now, I may be incorrect in that. The other thing is, you know, all this talk about the rent. There are an awful lot of businesses around here paying rent, restaurants paying rent. How does this compare to other businesses in the area? I mean, it seems like a ludicrous amount for the kind of site and access that they would have. This whole thing about the future and increasing the rent and all, yeah, we're in essence going to be financing their construction. Absolutely not in the benefit of the citizens. And I'm also, I don't know how we got to this point that we're really prioritizing a private business interest over the community surrounding it. I mean, obviously, the citizens are very much opposed to this happening. Why? Why are we prioritizing their interests? And something that really puzzles me is, if we're willing to go through all this, why didn't we open it up to bids from other businesses for this kind of construction and operation? Why didn't we look at whoever else might have come along and offered us, the citizens, a better deal? I mean, it's just really interesting that we have focused on this one business, and yet you would think that in the interest of the community, we would have opened this up for bids from anybody else interested in using this site and providing us perhaps with better terms. And that, are some of my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Mike Cochiola from Palm Coast. I'll admit I've enjoyed barbecue at Captain's, both by boat and by car. And so I think it's a boon to this community. I think it's a boon to our visitors because they have, as they come down by river or by highway, they are enticed into our beautiful park and into our beautiful county. I think it's great and a boon to our citizens because it gives them an option, another option that has a different, completely different ambiance. It's on the water. And we don't normally get to do that. There are very few places to dine and to visit on the water in Flagler County. So, having said that, I'm hoping that you can come to some kind of a compromise, and so that we get a restaurant there that, one, blends in to the park. It doesn't take over the park, but it's complementary to the park. It is designed to fit the ambiance, to enhance the ambiance of the park. In other words, nothing glaring and nothing huge. I think that they talked about 100 person seating. That's great. That keeps the footprint kind of low. But I do think, and from the previous speakers, it's right. We got to make sure that the terms by which we give the lessee are fair, not only fair to the lessee, but fair to the county. You need to get a fair value because you're putting up a high value piece of property. So I would hope that you would and captains would be able to get together and look at the monthly payments through the lease and look at the terms of the lease and come up with a compromise so we can get going, get this darn thing built, and we can all someday, a couple of years from now, get to enjoy some really good barbecue at Bing's Landing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cochiola. Next speaker, please.
Possible to get the projector going before you start my time.
Got it. Take the microphone.
He will.
Oh,
There you go.
I'm Dennis Clark, and I live in the hammock. You may recognize me. Also, if there's one thing that we learned today, it's that there's many different shades of green. Today, you have been given the opportunity to draw the wrong conclusion. Here's what's at stake. The simplest possible solution would be to fix a building, make it safe, and run out the lease. We all know that is possible. We will look pretty foolish if, when demolishing the building, we find a very simple solution was possible and low cost. If you've given up on that, you're considering getting a building for free, but it will actually cost you $750,000 over 20 years in rent credits, and you'll receive a 20-year-old building. Make no mistake, this is a Trojan horse. Here is a proposed building. It is ridiculously large for its intended purpose. Why? The obvious intention is to get 150 seats and 2,500 square feet of seating as soon as sewer is available, so they can get a full liquor license and need more parking. Here is a comparison of industry standards for restaurants against what is proposed. You can see that a 1,667 square feet accommodates the current capacity. 2,500 square feet allows fine dining space for 100 seats. The relative costs of building those buildings. So if you wanted to build it smaller, thanks. The 5,200 square feet allows for an NBA-sized basketball court inside. Thanks. Here is a diagram of what could be built on that location that has more, this is a segue from the previous person, has more than enough space for 100 seats and allows the pavilion to remain on the peninsula where it belongs. This solution is consistent with the public purpose and allows for the same capacity as the current building. As you can see, size matters. We don't mind Captain's Barbecue. The problem is the Captain's has already expanded to 3 times its original size since 2011. You can see the diagram here that shows the expansion since in 6 years, from 2011 to 2016. Please do not violate the public trust and the intent of a small carryout restaurant by allowing this in the county's flagship park. Also, that lease really needs to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Next speaker, please.
My name is Lori McSherry. I'm a new resident. I've been in Palm Coast about 3.5 years. I've been in the hammock since October of 2018, and this is a new issue for me. Sorry I don't have a green shirt on. I'm a bad Irish girl. It seems to me that you've had a tenant who's broke his lease over and over again, and yet he's still about to get away with murder and blackmail the residents of Palm Coast. As far as Mr. Adid saying he hasn't picked sides from the statements he's made today, it seems to me that he certainly has. I believe the commissioners should really take more time with this issue. The residents of the hammock are very passionate. I go to the South Dock often to watch the sunsets, and I like how quiet it is. I think that is a beautiful area and a very good asset to the hammock and to Palm Coast. I believe you should definitely address the situation. I know that he's willing to donate the building and pay for all the cost, but that is, I assume, because he'll be able to deduct that on his taxes once he donates that building. And I think it's wonderful that we're going to pay for the materials if we can get a better cost for him. I assume that the city's going to start a new program for other businesses that want to build a new building. If not, then maybe that should be looked at also. I didn't prepare a statement, but I am obviously very passionate about this, and I'm going to cut it short here because I'm not very good at public speaking either. This would be the first meeting I've done this in. So I really think you should think about this a lot more. Thank you.
You did great. Thank you.
Well.
Good morning. My name is Jim Quinn. I'm actually in favor of the project and the expansion of Captain's. The hammock's a waterfront paradise. It goes without saying. I'm struggling. I'm using my wife's glasses, so I can barely see. The project is expanding on a restaurant where there's a boating launch. How many more people would be coming and stopping into this restaurant and utilizing this opportunity to bring their family out, bring their relatives out from all over the United States? You know, I've come to every single one of these meetings, and here we are, months later, still trying to determine the same thing. Are we going to move forward or not? What are we waiting for? The facts have been presented several times. Several times. All the information's been presented. There's different faces. You're in a different seat. You were over here a few months ago. So everyone's had an opportunity to review all this documentation, sufficient documentation, a large quantity of documentation back and forth. So again, I ask, what are we waiting for? You're going to own a building. Okay, well, I know lots of people that own lots of 20-year-old buildings that are worth 50 times more than what they were 20 years ago. That's a fact. If you're in real estate, Mr. Mullins, you know that. 20 years, a lot of money. There's a lot of money there, especially a property that has a boating access and a park. I ask you, what are we waiting for? Today, all I see is we're spending taxpayers' money having this meeting over and over and over again, paying folks to provide the same documentation over and over and over again, so we can all look at the same documentation over and over and over again. What are we waiting for? They're going to pay for the building, and you're going to own the building. The county's going to own the building. And as I said before, I know lots of folks that purchase real estate and make a lot of money off of 20-year-old properties. It happens every minute of every single day. Thank you very much for your time. Please move in favor of this project with Captain's Barbecue so you can start saving taxpayers money.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Folks,
Hello, my name is Janet Sullivan. My husband and I live in the hammock. You are in a predicament that most of you wish you weren't in and wish you could magically get out of. Previous commissioners are responsible for this situation, but unfortunately, you're responsible for getting yourselves out. Right now, you're able to say that you had nothing to do with the decisions that brought you to this point. However, you need to make the right decisions now, or you will be associated with the problem rather than the solution. On one hand, you evidently have a broken building, and neither you nor the leasee have business interruption insurance, and the leasee, a member of your own planning board, continues to threaten to sue you if he doesn't get exactly what he wants. Voters of the county, including us at the Hammock Community Association, are not unsympathetic to your predicament. However, there is the annoying little fact that the homeowners of Flagler County paid for this specific park with a voluntary increase of their property taxes. I think it's possible to arrive at a compromise decision where no side gets everything they want, but each side should be able to live with the outcome. As you know, we fought hard, and we don't want a new building at all, but we would likely accept a replacement building, not an expansion. We want a building that you build so that you can have control over the site plan, the specs, the budget, and so forth. A building that you have control of at all times. A building built on your chosen site, and as you saw from Dennis's slides, we want it at the east end of the peninsula. We want a building that's the appropriate size according to restaurant seating standards for the current capacity of 98 seats and never any more. We want a building for the same purpose, single service carry-out barbecue, and a building that will either be put up for rebid as soon as possible or repurposed to a public building. Voters understand that you're in a bind, and I think they are willing to compromise for an appropriate replacement building for 98 seats. Voters will likely not accept a building that will initially use only 98 seats, but will actually accommodate 150 seats plus a bar, something that Lisi has indicated he wants when the sewer eventually comes through. Beware of the small words that Mr. Livingston was saying. There's a difference between the same footprint and 98 seats. 98 seats can withstand a much smaller footprint than the same footprint that Captain's now has. Wrapping up, we know that you all want this to go away, but please work with us. Advise Mr. Cameron to work with staff, find the money, use county labor, do whatever is needed to be done to get past the shortcomings of previous decisions. Show the voters you're not just reacting to a bullying Lisi and his threat of lawsuits, but are mindful of our priorities as well. Thank you very much. And Mr. Erickson, it looks like you're feeling better, and I'm very grateful for that.
thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Todd Swinderman. I'm Secretary of the Hammock Community Association and a resident of the Hammock. A lot of the points that I was going to make have already been talked about, so I'm not going to repeat some of them. You're being asked to make a choice between two options, while common sense has been asked to sit outside these doors. The common sense solution is repair the building and run out the lease. That's what the residents of the Hammock want. Public is concerned that the private business is going to overwhelm and overtake this park, and that's their objection to this proposed expansion. Talking about the footprint, you can't compare a bunch of shacks and lean-tos, screening fences, slabs, to what is an efficient building size. My nephew is an architect who designs restaurants. He confirmed these numbers. You can put a 98-seat barbecue restaurant in 1,667 square feet and run it efficiently. Sonny's Barbecue, the average size is 5,000 square feet, and they put 180 seats in that restaurant. And this lease has so many holes in it, you can drive a semi-truck through it. Just a couple that haven't been mentioned. Al, your favored clause in there, mysteriously, the one phrase disappeared. This phrase is not in there. And accordingly, will not compromise or harm the quality or reputation of this unique park or resource. Could be just a word processing error, but, you know, take it for what it is.
It's been noted.
As the lady before said, the lessee has demonstrated taking advantage of every crack, everything that's not said in the lease to expand their business at the expense of the public. The lease says it can be open till 11 p.m. Mark my words, when the sewer goes through, you're going to have a nightclub in a public park with the best view in the county. And then the lessee is going to get it for essentially nothing. So I urge you also to build the building, build it as small as necessary to satisfy your obligation to give them an efficient building to run their business in, and keep the lease as short as possible at market rates. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Al, was there something you wanted to say?
That omission was noted and to be corrected in the lease. That is the one that Mr. Swindeman referred to. Section 6, I'm recalling was the number.
My name is Dr. Lynn Bravo Rosewater, and I want to talk about the fact that this is a terrible deal for the county. If you build this building, you can build a big screened-in porch. You can replicate what that big screened-in porch is. You do not need to have a mammoth building to seat 98 people. And what bothers me is the smoke and mirrors of the presentation by the captain's people. Because they say, we're happy with 98 seats, but we're building something that can accommodate 150 seats. And so that is the thing. There will be sewers. And when those come, they have the same building they proposed when it was 150 in its bar. Hasn't changed. That's what they say they're going to do. $1 million. No one seems planned, so we don't even know if it's $1 million. But the most important point is, since inception, Captain has paid so below the market cost. You have lost so much money because they're paying now $780 a month. And they have been ever since $750. Ever since they've been there. And now what they're saying is, we'll build this building. By the way, please buy our supplies, we'll reimburse you. Could we use your laborers? Well, you can use your laborers and you can buy. And if you replicate this building, screened-in porch, then to whatever you need to build, to put the other equipment in, you could do this at a decent price. If they say they're going to take 3 years to build it, you certainly could build it over 2 calendar financial years. Maybe you could build it over 3 calendar financial years where you could average the cost out. You have county laborers who can work for you. Making a big screened-in enclosure is not a difficult thing to do. And then you can get market rate for what you have. Of course they want a beautiful peninsula overlooking the water, but this is not their property. And I think the issue is that it's a very realistic fear that if Captain's owners build, they will continue their domination in determining the future of Bing's Landing, whose land they neither own nor pay property taxes on, but treat as their own personal property. Please build it and get the control back with the county where it belongs. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matt Hathaway, Flagler resident. Look, I'm going to be really quick here. I got to go to work. So unfortunately, there's a lot of individuals in my demographic that can't be here today that support captains that just can't be here because they have work. They have lives that they have to get about, and they're constantly moving and going. So, but with that said, look, I get it. I understand. Even though I do support captains, but I understand there needs to be a win-win solution here. And creating a win-win solution is going to be difficult for you guys. I don't want to be in your seats. But one thing I know is that Captain's works. It's clear. It's been working. You're not rated #1 in Google, #1 TripAdvisor, #1 Facebook, #1 Yelp when it doesn't work, okay? So it's obviously working. And for my demographic, we like to see that type of progress. We want to see things that work. We like to see things that bring positive and progressive approach to our county. And I hope you guys can make a decision in that realm. I get it. Look, I don't have notes. I just showed up. I haven't even, this is the first meeting I've been to in regards to it. So I admit I don't know the background. But what I do know is that it's a working, collective, collaborative, great agreement that you guys have to a certain extent because Captains is successful. Let the market, let free enterprise tell you if it wasn't. They wouldn't have the good reviews that they have now. They wouldn't have the reputation that they have. They have an unbelievably great reputation. And it's very difficult as a small business owner, regardless of the situation that you're in, to have a reputation like they do. And the reputation speaks for themselves online. Okay? And with that said, I really hope you guys can create a win-win solution. I want to specifically, hopefully, I can present the demographic that can't be here, that can't be here today. I mean, I'm sure you guys get the emails. I'm sure you guys read the social media and so forth. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of folks that can't be here to support Captains, and not just Captains, supporting a win-win solution, keeping a solution that works for Flagler County, because these are the kind of things we need. We need options like this. When you go to another town, what is the first thing you do? Let's see how good they are online. Let's see the reputation. Is it a quality establishment that I want to go to? And you know what comes up right at the top when you come to Flagler County? Captain's Barbecue. It does. And when I travel and if I go somewhere else, I'm looking for solid establishments that work, that I want to spend my money in and I want to take my family to. And that's what Captain's is. And I hope we can make a solution that works for both. I get it. I understand the multiple sides, but I just wanted to be here specifically to support Captain's in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is John Mampy. I'm a resident of the Hammock. Last week, after a meeting with Mr. Cameron and Mr. Dixon, Ms. Petito, I sent each of you a email where I described an alternative that I believe would be a win-win-win for the county. For the record, I'll briefly recap that here. And describe the location. The location that I propose is immediately south of the existing Captain's Barbecue location, straddling the creek. Currently, there's a creek or drainage ditch area. It preserves untouched the peninsula, a location that is so dear to the citizenry that it is used for so many weddings, group events, family reunions, and other functions. By straddling the creek, about half of the building would be over the creek and thus not take away valuable land. In addition, by clearing the undergrowth, it would open up fantastic views for the public of the river and providing enhanced views of the beautiful oaks and cedars that are just to the north, or to the east and to the west of the location that is being proposed. If any of you have ever been to or read articles about Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpiece, Falling Water, you realize how properly treated building over moving water can showcase a location and make it a valuable asset to the county. During construction, by limiting but permitting certain vehicles to use the access road into the south parcel, but not extend into the area where there are trails, the restaurant would not be impacted the way it would be if there's building on the peninsula itself. On the peninsula, you'd have to have storage of materials, you'd have to have the dumpsters for removal of debris and things of that nature, this would avoid those impacts. By building on the higher land that's suggested, very little of the elevation of the building would be needed to meet building within the floodplain. Currently, building in the peninsula area is going to require that the bottom of the floor joist be 5 to 6 feet above that location. I implore you that if you're considering this vote, that you amend any proposal to include looking at an alternative site other than the peninsula. And the one that I'm offering, I believe, would be the winner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Steve Hatcher. I live in the hammock. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I'm Steve Hatcher. I live in the hammock. The captain's attorney sent a letter to Mr. Hadid stating that he'd be willing to have the county construct and build a building to replace the existing building. There are specifications that it would have the same capacity as the current building. The current building accommodates 100 seats. Back when the planning board met to discuss the restaurant, Mr. Livingston and county staff submitted documents and made testimony to the effect that the current restaurant only needs 1,500 square feet to accommodate the current customer base of 100 people. Using the industry standards, 1,500 square feet for 60% of the restaurant would produce 2,500 square feet for the total restaurant. Mr. Livingston indicated that the current building is inefficiently laid out due to the way it's grown like topsy. If a better designed building would only consume 2,500 square feet, and that would reduce the cost of the building by 50%. In addition, if county staff were to be used to build the building, just as they've been used to make the expansions at the current building and to build constructors at Princess Place, the cost could be further reduced. I share your concern with the budget of $226 million a year, but if you reduce the square foot by half, use staff, which is already in the budget, and schedule the project over 2 years, you can minimize the impact of the project on the county budget. And this would be something that would be far more preferable to the members or people living in the hammock. Also, this would put the county in control of the construction of the project, and it would enable the county to better manage the risks that are in that settlement agreement. They're quite onerous. Basically, this agreement says if captains encounters and problems in permitting, designing, and constructing the building, then the deal's off, and you guys are on the hook. That's a hell of a deal. Thank you.
Good morning, or is it afternoon? My name is Carol Scott, and I'm a 19-year resident of the hammock. And as a retired teacher, I want to congratulate Mr. David Sullivan for doing your homework, and the others of you as well. And we certainly are sympathetic to your problem, which is our problem as well. And more than 2,000 people in the hammock have signed a petition, so it's everybody's problem. I have so many notes and everything, but I'm really passionate about the ESL funds, the environmentally sensitive land funds that the voters, the taxpayers, decided that that's what we'll do. We'll pay for this if you will purchase Biggs Landing, that wonderful People's Park. And I think you remember what your fiduciary responsibility is to protect and preserve that land, and not to have a vendor there selling barbecue, whether you like it or not. But maybe it could be a county building for meetings and such. I don't want you to build a building. I don't want the owner of the barbecue to build a building. If that building can wait three years while something else is being built, I don't understand why this person could stay in business. Last time I spoke with you, I called you Santa Claus, and I said that if Mr. Goodman was going to sue you, that's like suing Santa Claus. Today, I'm saying that why would he do that? Why would he want to take advantage of you any longer, because you have been so generously gifting him with that low rent? And I wonder how many times you've heard this fervent plea, please just let the lease run out and deal with this later. He's not going to sue you. That's greedy. And that's another thing teachers tell their students, don't call names. But I'm telling you, that is a greedy person who wants to do this to the county and to the People's Park. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Peter, and I've been a Flagler resident.
Peter, can you give your last name, please, sir?
Bizzett, Peter Bizzett.
Thank you, sir.
I've been a Flagler resident way before Bing's, and Bing's looked terrible. All Captain's does is clean it up and keep it nice, and helps our tourism come in. I don't think the Hammock people will be really happy. They'd be coming yelling at you if the homeless were living in there, because that's what would happen. And we're supposed to be focusing on Flagler, bringing jobs, that's what they do. Bringing tourism dollars, that's what they do. Mike and Chris have been very patient with y'all. They work with you and have been wanting to compromise. So, just let them build their new building. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Betty Ledyard. I live in Flagler Beach, and I am here in total support of Chris Herrera and the rebuild of Captain's. Obviously, the repairs are much needed. It is a fantastic place for families. The restaurant is going to be rebuilt. Chris's community spirit is unrivaled. He is the one man who understands the natural beauty of this area because he lives it and he loves it. Personally, I live on John Anderson, and we have been dealing with the St. John River water management decimation of our extraordinary wetlands, and now we are facing a mega development of 4,000 homes being put on the river. The people of the Hammock do not realize how lucky they are to have a local man who loves this area and who will not do anything to harm them. He really does care about the area. He has been an incredible, vital asset in our fight against St. John's destruction of the wetlands. I feel he would probably lay down in front of the excavator if he could stop it. We are talking about a man with an incredibly huge heart and total commitment to preserving the natural beauty of the area. We are all lucky to have him potentially be in charge of this. I know that most of these commissioners here have been out with Chris on his boat in the wetlands, and I know that you are aware of his fever to preserving this beautiful land. He is a local man, and he absolutely can be trusted. I know that we can all take his promises to heart, and he will do the rebuild of Captain's and still maintain the old Florida feel of it. You all in the Hammock do not realize what we are facing right now with this 4,000 building potentially going on off of John Anderson. If you invite other builders in and other corporations in to do the bid on this restaurant, you are welcoming the wolf to your door.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, my name is Wanda Christie, and I live in the Hammock. Speaking this late in the agenda, most everything has been said. But the one advantage that I have about being able to hear everybody else's opinion, and I side with Commissioner Sullivan on the idea that there's much more information that needs to be had. This is a mess. There's a lot to consider, and I don't think you have the information to make a decision today. Without evidence and verification that the building needs to be demolished, I don't think you can make a decision either way. However, I know you all want to get past this, and if you are intent on making a decision today on who builds the building, there's a real simple and logical solution. The county builds an appropriate-sized building suited for the park, which satisfies the obligation to Captain's Barbecue. When the lease expires, change it to a triple net lease, fair market value, get out of the rental business. The county this way maintains control of the location, the design, the future use of the building, and gets public support and preserves the park, and public confidence is restored in you. Any decision other than that today will drag this out further and add to the cost of the project. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is David Still, and I live at 21 Smiling Fish in Palm Coast. I am a PE registered engineer in the state of Florida, and I was a former executive director to one of the water management districts of Swanee River Water Management District. We had 300,000 acres in public trust, and the ones that we worked out better than any were the private-public partnerships. And that's what you're looking at today. You've got a public-private partnership. I don't envy your decision, but I trust that you'll make the right decision. But I will warn you that there has been a silent majority out here that believes that Captain's is a good thing and it should go forward. I use that facility 2 to 3 times a week. And the way I know that there's a silent majority is because I keep hearing comments from these people who are against it. And that's just disrespectful. They should have respect for people who have another opinion or another thought process. And after managing public lands for my whole career, I just think that having some private-public partnership is the best way to go. And I think that you have the perfect partners at Captain's today. Thank you very much.
James Hill, Plantation Bay. First of all, this is not a joint venture. Secondly, as far as Captain's suing the county, there's nothing in the lease. The lease does not even require from day one that a percentage of income goes to the county. All we have is $1,000. All we have is $1,000. And how many hundreds of thousands have we spent and staff time while we don't have a helicopter to take people to the hospital? We have broken water tanks, a sheriff, but we're worried about somebody suing us who doesn't owe us a dime of their income. But they have spent hours and money paying their attorney. This is disgraceful. The current lease, number one, requires an insurance policy naming the county as named insured. I have been asking Al Hadid and Julie Murphy since May 6th. Produce the insurance policy. At 9 o'clock last night, I get an insurance policy written by a company that only writes lines that nobody else wants to write, surplus lines. Burlington Insurance, who went in business in 1986. Guess what Bings is insured for? The Captain's. Sporting good and barbecue. Doesn't even say liquor. And we should be the number one named insured because we own the property. Why is Captain's the name insured? If somebody sues them, they don't have a pot to piss in. We don't even have a financial statement from them. But we're the secondary named insured, and I'm invited to go to Al Hadid's office a month later to see what we're insured for because he forgot to send me that. Secondly, according to the current lease, you can shut these people down today. They have had 2 violations, and pardon my temper. They've had a food violation, which is enough to shut them down.
They've also had 118 seats. Mr. Hadid, you live 2 blocks away. You can't count the difference between 98 and 118 seats. We get no income from them. They pay no tax. And none of their insurance covers our docks. Anybody who drinks wine or beer and gets in a boat and kills somebody, we are 100% responsible, because even their lopsided insurance policy only protects the county within the restaurant confines itself. Now, the liquor license, thank you, Commissioner Sullivan, that they can buy. They should have no liquor license whatsoever where we have floating docks next to the intercoastal. What you should do, let the lease run out, tell them to go to hell, tell them to sue the county. They don't owe us anything. Shut them down and let some kids run the place, or let them run it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please, Mr.
Okay.
Hadid.
I don't mean to, it'd probably take me 3 minutes just to correct all of that stuff.
It's
Okay,
already
fir-
exhausting. Please
Yeah,
do so.
No, okay.
Lord have mercy.
What I would like the board to do is authorize the placement into the record of the clerk for this meeting relative to the statements made about the provision of the lease agreement, that be entered into the minutes, entered into the record, because it clearly shows exactly what transpired. The representation was incomplete, misleading, and in some regards false. Number two, we are the beneficiaries of that insurance policy as an additional insured. I provided that certification to Ms. Yu. That's what she was really concerned about. You all were recipients of those emails, and by the way, after I gave her that, I think I got 8 more emails, just all over the place. So we have the insurance. She didn't get all the coverages. The coverages are very extensive, as you know. If you get your policies, it shows all the endorsements. They have the liquor liability. And there were classifications in order to determine the premium. That was not a limitation on the coverage. The coverage is defined by the endorsements that are part of the coverage. And I'm happy to provide that. Under the conditions of reviewing that document, as I stated, given that she has pending a very large multiple part public records request. So that's my 3 minutes. I would like the board to authorize the filing of that in the record so that it is absolutely clear to the members of the public, should anyone want to look at that.
Sir?
Was that a consensus?
Yes.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure the clerk sees it, hears it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Philip Lazat. I live about 3 miles down the road from Biggs Landing, and I've been in Palm Coast about 4.5 years now. I use Bing's quite a bit, both by boat and by car. I really enjoy it. I think it's a great location. However, I think some people like to make it out to be something that it's not. It's not some pristine, untouched utopia. There's boats going in and out of there all the time. There's a launch. There's an existing building there. Obviously, as you know, that we're talking about, there's a lease that is, I believe there's 7 years left on the original lease, and there's a 20-year extension that I believe has been signed. So we have tremendous financial liabilities here as a community. When we talk about these lawsuits, no one wants to hear about lawsuits, but as someone told you, you're going to get sued either way. And I believe the county attorney told you the ramifications of whichever party prevails, although one thing, if Bing's prevails, it's going to be a lot more than attorney's fees that us taxpayers are going to be on the hook for. I think you guys have a very difficult decision. I don't envy your decision. I think all this talk about looking at different locations, looking at different, engineering, we're getting caught up in analysis paralysis here. Nothing's going to change. There'll be something else that'll come up at the next meeting that someone will want to talk about. You got a tough decision to make. I hope you guys can come to a conclusion today and move forward with this. Personally, I hope you approve Captain's proposal. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Lazat. Speaking right after my brother, we're going to probably say some similar things, but I think the biggest point is there's 27 years left on a signed lease. This is an expensive prospect, I believe, for our county. If this doesn't go through, if there's not a compromise reached, which I'm sure there can be a compromise reached, there are thousands of your constituents who would be furious that there's a hugely expensive process that unfolds because we didn't reach a compromise. I believe what was proposed in the latest agreement that was discussed, or a possible lease that was discussed, it seems reasonable and is definitely the course of action that would cost the county the least amount of money here. And I know that, again, there's thousands of constituents, not the NIMBY people here in Green, but the other thousands that are concerned about what the ultimate cost would be. And there's a clear decision here that will save the county money, and I hope we proceed with that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Elizabeth Hathaway, and I am here in definite support of Captain's Barbecue and their proposal. I feel they've conceded, made many concessions, some which were accepted and then rejected. I've been following this from the very beginning very closely. I will not repeat anything that's already been said. I will not give you suggestions because I believe you've been given ample information. You're privy to so much more than we could possibly know. I feel that the time for suggestions of different alternatives has come and passed. I believe that people who had suggestions should have sent those in before we got to this stage. This is a decision-making time, and we need to move on. And I think it's in the best interest of Flagler County, its residents, its visitors, to keep Captain's Barbecue functioning at its fullest capacity. My family enjoys it, those from out of town. I take my children there. And I can tell you, after visiting this area for 20 years, I did not take them to Bing's Landing before Captain's had come in and done what they've done to it. It's been revitalized. They are now put on the map for a reason. I believe they've done an excellent job. They're upstanding citizens in our community, and they should be praised for what they've done, not disparaged in these horrible remarks that I've been reading about and hearing about since this all began. Chris and Mike are amazing people. They give back to the community, and they're respectful. They've been respectful in their dealings with the people, with the commission, I believe. So I think that says a lot for their stance. They've shown utmost respect, and I believe they would do so moving forward. I don't think they would try to take advantage of anybody or anything, and especially not the citizens in their county. They're a small business, and we should respect that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning. My name is Jamie Black, and I live in the Hammock. And I'm sure you are very sick of this, just as we are. However, I feel that if there is any question in any commissioner's mind, that this does need to be put off for a little bit later. But I also wanted to say, my parents came here in the early 80s, and when I first came here, I thought, where they moved to? I cannot believe this place, because there was nothing here. We've had a lot of really good progress, but part of that was they worked very hard to continue to save the park and to create the Hammock Community Association, which has been involved in this, and we're also a part of. So this is not a popularity contest about the owners of Captain's or whether their barbecue is good or not. This is about a county resource that's very, very sacred to some of us. And people may say, yes, it looked bad a couple of years ago. The people that maybe were running the concession before didn't do such a good job. And I do think that Captain's has done a good job. Again, a lot with county resources. And I think that we should probably keep the building where it is. Maybe work on it when they're closed. We don't know, because as far as I understand, the people in the Hammock Community Association have not had the ability to inspect the building for themselves or send an inspector in, from what I understand. So we don't even know what is a possibility with that building. Perhaps you all do. Maybe they could shut it down at night and work on it. Maybe they can shut it down over several weeks and not have Captain's lose a lot of their business. However, it is a resource that has been set aside for all of us to enjoy in the future, especially the children. It's a resource for them as well as anybody else in the future. And the idea is, what are y'all going to do to be known down the road as what you actually allowed to happen in this park? It's so important to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The folks that are in line here, we're going to finish this line and then we're going to recess. Okay?
My name is Ann Butler. I'm a resident of Flagler County and a voter in Flagler County. I'm here today to implore you to save our park from the proposed gross commercialization of our park. Please protect our park by doing whatever is necessary. It seems to me most reasonable that the county can protect it by owning the property, building the building. But I know that everyone has had concerns about the financial responsibilities. I will say that as a resident and a taxpayer, please, if you have to float a bond, if you have to increase our taxes, please do so. We as citizens have devoted thousands and thousands of hours to the hammock. We have made sacrifices for our park. I have worked in that park removing invasive species hour upon hour to make it a better place. We will continue to make sacrifices in order to keep our park beautiful and not a commercial entity. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, it's not going to grow.
My name's Mike Christie. I'm a third-generation Floridian. I've heard people come up here say they've been here 3 years, 19 years, and I know there's been families here a hell of a lot longer than my family. But the bottom line is the old saying, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. You have to ask yourself, what in the hell is Goodman? Why is he doing this? He came before like he's going to give the county a gift. There's a reason behind it. You all know it. You claim you know so much about, oh, I'm sorry, I have to approach the chair, and I'll do that. Some people claim that they have all these backgrounds. I've heard, the captains in the Navy, fear no evil. But here you go, you got a guy threaten you, he's going to sue you. He said before he wouldn't sue, he goes out and he gets another attorney to put a little bit more steam behind his line, to scare you into making another decision. There's an odor to this whole thing, and I know you guys are sick of it. It goes way back, but you people, if you vote for this, that odor is going to stick with you. It's going to be all over you, and it's not going to go away. If Goodman is such a big shot with all this money, he's going to do this and that, why didn't he get off his own damn wallet like I had to do to buy a house, like every one of you people had to do, and probably everybody in this room? You got to spend your own damn money. Nobody rides for free. We all know that. So and you have this fear that he's going to sue you. He's not going to sue you because he's not going to open his books up. The money that he does have, I'd like to know where, I'd like to see the open books. And you, commissioners, being in charge of the taxpayer's dollar, maybe you ought to like this. It's okay, sue us. We want to see what it's all about. Maybe he's really been in the county over even more than you know. That's all I got to say. Remember, the odor is going to be with you. So,
thank you, Mr. Christie.
Yeah, hi, my name is Rick Alford. I'm a resident here in Flagler. I am in support of this project. I am in support of this local, non-franchise, family-owned business. It is family-owned, and I think that this going in an already existing location and refurbishing it or building a new building is a lot better than ripping into new land here. We're facing overdevelopment. I think we need to pick our battles here, not battle with people that bring in jobs and people that bring in tourists. I think we need to fight overdevelopment, like the big project going on down here. They want to bring in 4,000 homes on Bulow, the head of the Bulow Creek. I think that's going to devastate us in the long run. And I think we really need to focus on the real battles here and the real damage that's could happen to us. Also, the salt marsh project that's going on right now. They're just wreaking havoc on our environment here. And talk about damage and destruction to this area. I think we need to get together here. I understand both sides. I think that we need to make a decision today. I think we need to heal and move forward and battle the real problems that we're facing. And, you know, I think it's I am in favor of private-public partnerships. They have been fairly successful, very successful in our country. And I think we'll get through this and come together as a community. And like I said, I hope everybody, you know, sticks together and battles our larger problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Tara Russo from Palm Coast, and I'm in favor of this. I think that Captain's Barbecue is a big draw to the area, and I can tell you a number of years ago, my introduction to the hammock was actually going to Bing's, going to Captain's Barbecue, and that's how I saw Bing's Landing. And 2 weeks ago, I became a homeowner in the hammock, and I wouldn't have even known this area had I not gone to the restaurant. So I think, you know, it just makes me wonder, like, how many other people have been introduced to the hammock by the draw of going to Captain's. And so I do hope that you'll take that into consideration.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recess.
Have a second?
We only got two people?
They came in later.
Oh.
No, I didn't.
I had.
Excuse me, I did not come. I've been sitting here.
Do we
ever
have a
since
motion
it
to the
started.
second to recess? Okay, that motion dies. Okay.
Joan Affatato, Plantation Bay. This whole debacle should never have happened from the very beginning. When this lease was signed, it was written by the past county administrator, and our county attorney never, I shouldn't say never because he'll protect himself. We taxpayers were never protected in this lease. And there are issues with the old lease where the new lease shouldn't even come in to play. Captain's, Mr. Sullivan, you said you had breakfast there. Captain's Barbecue, bait, tackle, barbecue, is not a breakfast, lunch, or dinner place. Where is that stated in the lease, Mr. Hadid? This is shameful, absolutely shameful for Flagler County. And we have representatives, not all of them, sitting on this board that have received very hefty campaign money from Mr. Goodman and Mr. Herrera. Okay? That's a conflict of interest, I would say. Now, this lease should be voided because of what has happened. And if it's not, and you people, you commissioners, okay, and the county administrator and Mr. Hadid cannot find it in their heart to listen to we taxpayers, this lease should be voided, and Mr. Goodman, the county should let him live out his lease and take his restaurant somewhere else. There's no property taxes being charged to Mr. Goodman. I pay property taxes where I live. Where is the knowledge from all of you representatives? It's sinful. absolutely sinful. You're not representing us. You're representing somebody else. I hope and pray that today, that you and each and every one of you make the correct decision and think about everything
Thank you,
that
next speaker.
should be voided
Thank
in
you,
the
next
first
speaker.
lease
Thank
and
you,
the
next
next one.
speaker.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Hadid, did you want to correct the record about conflict of interest in campaign contributions, please?
Yes, sir. The giving of a campaign contribution in and of itself does not constitute a conflict of interest under the Florida Ethics Code and as interpreted by the Ethics Commission.
Thank you, sir.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on November 19th, you had it exactly right. If you go back to what you said when you went to vote for this, you thought there were other options. You were right. Charlie was right also when he wanted to postpone on this particular. The reason why we're in this mess right now is because people didn't follow your lead on that. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about are the facts. Okay. Number one, do you realize that the maintenance building that's down there, or the caretaker's building, has been disconnected from the sewer system down there to allow for more seating at the restaurant? I've never heard that come up here at all. I'm hoping that all you guys know that. That's how they got back to the 98 seats when there was a recount down there. I looked at this thing from the standpoint of being a general contractor from years. And so I went to the website from the tax appraiser. The building that we're talking about here is 25 feet wide and 52 feet long. That's a problem. Okay, gentlemen, it's a single-story, double wide, okay, on a crawl space. Okay, we can't fix this? This is absolutely inconceivable to me that you can't fix what we see going down the highway every day on 95, and we can't fix this from underneath. I do suggest that one of the reasons why maybe this building was fatigued is because it is exceeding the 40 pounds per square foot loading that is normal residential loading that's built for a building of this nature. And it's just been enhanced. You'd add a little concrete here, 20 feet here, and the seating areas and such. But you were absolutely right, Mr. Chairman. Okay, there are other options, and it's really very simple. The other thing is I want you to know is that I took the time to go down and sit with the guy who controls all of this. And Mr. Cameron is exactly right in what he's telling you on this, is that this is all controlled by the state. It supersedes everything you do here with the state health code. I went down and sat with the health department for an hour and a half and took notes, okay? He's kind of baffled as how they originally got to 98 seats. He can't figure it out. I guess he wasn't the guy. My understanding was he was not the guy in the seat at the time. The point is that if you move that building and you put up a new building and you try and use the old septic system, okay, if you do, that's a new permit. And what's going to happen is the seating factor is going to change. Okay, you're going to change from a 2 to a 1.8, and you're going to lose seating. This thing is a mess. You guys got to fix the double wide that's sitting there and marry up some joists underneath it and look into the loading that's underneath that kitchen. It's obviously creating a problem there. And there's a very simple fix to this thing, and we have spent months, 6 months, chasing this thing around and making all you guys nuts. Thanks very much.
Hi, thank you. This is Denise Garcia, and I live in the Hammock, and there's probably a lot of people here that are not happy with me standing up right now. But first, I wanted to apologize to you, the commissioners, because I know you wanted to take a break. I thank you for allowing a few extra ones of us to come up and speak. I also wanted to say that at the beginning of this meeting, it was stated to not speak badly about people personally or bring up names. Too many people have done that here today, and I really think that that's unfortunate. I don't think that that should have taken place. What I want to say is that another gentleman spoke earlier about the younger generation that really loves our Hammock. We love our scenic A1A, and we love our parks, but we also want to see growth, and we want to see growth done in the correct manner. I think that you would want to have somebody who lives in your community running the businesses in your community. If you open it up to a large bid to any other companies to come here, you're going to be in big trouble. because they're going to do whatever they want, because they're going to have the higher priced attorneys. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous because I really feel that they're very mad at me right now. But I have to honor what is taking place, that everybody's forgetting about the rest of us that love the Hammock and the rest of us that live here. The Hammock Community Association does not run all of us. We have more people that live here that love Bings, love Captains, and love the way things are going. Thank you.
Thank you. I entertain a motion for a recess. We have a second.
Second.
All right, we're recessed. Okay, I am going to call our budget workshop meeting to order. And our first order of business is to please join me in pledge to the flag. Okay, the noticed 1 p.m. budget workshop meeting is convened. I would entertain a motion to recess it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recess the budget meeting and reconvene the council meeting, commission meeting.
Right, so we have a second to recess the budget workshop. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
So I'm going to call for a reconvene on our county commission, regular county commission meeting. I don't think we need a motion, I guess. I apologize. Yep, we're reconvened on the county commission meeting. We were in the middle of public comments. Any further public comments on this item? Okay, before we do that, we have some clarifications, I think, from you, Mr. Hadid.
Yes, and also to give the attorneys the balance of their reserved time that they reserved. So first, very quickly, let me just go through my notes. This was a statement made by Ms. Campen. She said there were lease violations, a lot of lease violations. And those lease violations were reported to us. And when they were reported, we did act on them. Mr. Cameron prepared a notice of violation which was sent in March. I think all of you are aware of that, on a variety of issues, and they corrected all of those lease violations. So it's not a situation of repetitive violations as might have been suggested. The lease has very clear terms about when there's a violation of the lease and the process going forward. So as of right now, there is no pending violation or any action. I have the document that I want to put into the record, which the board indicated by consensus that it would so direct, so I will be holding it aloft. I will be providing it to the clerk of the court. There's some reference made about the prior state of the property and what was to happen, and what had happened in terms of what motivated the county to pursue the purchase was because the Bings, the Bings camp, the fish camp, was subject to a purchase agreement by a developer who's going to build townhouses, and it was that act that caused the county to step in and purchase it. Okay, there was a request to void leases. And I just want to caution the board on that. I want you to remember that the determination that the board made in December of 2018, there's a motion to reconsider, motion to rescind. The action wasn't made with parliamentary precision, but the way that it would be properly interpreted by the courts, given all of the facts that is the facts that you knew, the things that caused you to question the November 18, 2018 lease, was the effect of your actions, in our view, was to suspend consideration until you had additional time to study all the issues, because you had felt the facts had not been presented to you. So it was the full facts. And so therefore, it basically temporarily stopped that decision from going forward and allowed you to consider. So to do an instantaneous kind of voiding, I would strongly suggest you should not. There's some comments made about the health department and the seating and an interview and notes. When we did send the notice of violation to captains, that triggered obviously the efforts that were expended. The calculation of the 98 seats was an updated analysis by the health department, with which we, that is Flagler County, with which Mr. Cameron, Mr. Hadid, the various officials of our county government, we did not participate in that, obviously deferring to that state agency. Comment was made about replacing the double wide and joisting it up. I want to remind you that the chief building official has rendered his opinion that if the costs to repair the existing facility exceeds 50% of its value, and I don't know how that value is determined, don't look to me, that's the chief building official's bailiwick, probably working with the property appraiser, that the structure must be rebuilt to current codes, including wind loading. There was some comment made about the use of the facility hooking up the caretaker's house. The county administration had already decided that they do not want to have a caretaker at that facility. It is the experience, by the way, also confirmed by Mr. Cameron's own experience. The decision was made before Mr. Cameron, but through Mr. Cameron's own experience that such personnel, such arrangements are not useful to the government, so that it was disbanded. I guess the comment was made that it was disconnected to allow more seating. That is not correct. Totally separate considerations. It may have had an impact, but the impact would have been very small, mainly because the caretaker's house only had one toilet and one sink. Some reference was made that, well, if you hook up whatever, it's going to be considered a new use and the ratio changes 2.0 to 1.8. That's exactly why Mr. Cameron selected an objective standard of using the state standards. If that translation is into a lesser number of seats, then that is what the county is going to enforce. So I think that those are all of mine. Now, Miss West, I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Ms. West reserved 1 minute and 40 seconds, so if you would permit her to address you, that would be appreciated. And then following her will be Mr. Livingston, who reserved 2 minutes. So Mr. Livingston, when you see her coming to a conclusion, if you could approach. Thank you, members of the board.
Perfect. Thank you, Jane West again. Good afternoon. I briefly just want to let the commissioners know that the visual that you see here is what my clients are absolutely amenable to. Just to be perfectly clear, okay? It is not an outright rejection to everything that has been proposed, and I wanted to make that abundantly clear. What is important is that we have all the information that we need going forward. And as Mr. Sullivan alluded to, and I think it's very justified, his suggestion of giving everyone a little bit more oxygen on this, do your due diligence, get the information that you need, and do it right this time, and take a year break. If you're not going to do that, make sure that you get the details in this lease that need to be in this lease. If they are not seeking a liquor license, codify that in the lease. If they are amenable to 98 seats, codify that in the lease. If they are amenable to letting go of the exclusive boat slips, codify that in the lease. And very quickly, Mr. Sullivan also mentioned that when he went out to inspect the property in detail, he noticed a slight dip where the new pavilion would be. That slight dip is a stormwater retention pond, just so you know, and opposing counsel would concur with that. What the lease is silent about, and we really would like to have, is the pavilion. This has been an ongoing issue. The way that it's currently designed would not include any sort of pavilion whatsoever, and it would be on the county to remove it. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. West.
Good afternoon. Jay Livingston here on behalf of Captains. On the graphic that's on the screen, which you can leave there, one of the reasons why the graphic in the lease that was attached to ours, which again is conceptual because we have not had a chance to do the site plan, is pushed farther to the west is to avoid impacts to the trees, which we don't believe can be done if we build it in this location. In addition, is to avoid impacts to the existing sidewalk infrastructure. We did it specifically to the west of the existing sidewalk to not interfere with the existing pedestrian paths that are there. And we've proposed the size building that encapsulates all of the existing uses in a more efficient way, and we believe that it's a comparable relocation to avoid the word expansion, which again, because of the septic system, is not what we're proposing. As far as the site plan issue is kind of a critical thing, because what I think is lost here is that we approached the county several years ago about the building problems, and we were given very specific instructions by the county administrator at the time on how to handle it because the county did not have money to fix the building or to rebuild the building. So in good faith, we worked very hard for a very long time on site planning, on the location of the new building, which this was one of our preferred locations, which was vetoed by the county administrator at the time, which is how we got to the other location. We went through, we paid for a portion of the county's survey that had been ordered. We paid for the engineer and the planning designs. We went through all of the review processes in good faith. We went through review, including with the A1A Scenic Board, that approved it 7-2 in the first review. And when they rejected it the second time around, it was because of the contents of the lease, which is not even within the scope of what they are allowed to review under the role that they play as a land use advisory board. And with that, there's that history there that I think needs to be recalled, because we acted in good faith for a very long time under the direction of the county staff.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, bring it back to...
Can I ask a question on that picture, though?
Please, sir.
The new building, though, does that block access to the bridge that was damaged during the storms to the south? Yes. Does it block? Okay. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, that bridge has been scheduled to been rebuilt for a couple of years now.
When I was there, it looks like any kind of building there is going to some degree, block that entrance.
And I wouldn't call the Malacompa Canal a river.
It's a creek. I didn't call it a river.
The trees and the bridge and the sidewalk were the primary consideration for why we pushed it further to the west.
Right. You can't have it both ways.
Other discussion, commissioners?
Well, it seems to me that we have an opportunity to do something today, and I'm not sure what that something is, but I think there's a way to compromise this. I think I'm not comfortable with the 5,000 square foot building, how that's going to sit on the property. I haven't seen a rendering of that Mr. Livingston's side has put out. So I'm not sure where that fits in. The building on this picture, the 2,500 square foot building, I like the situation of that, but I'd like to see us in a compromised fashion get to something like 3,500 square feet. I don't think it's a cut and dried that, I mean, I hear all the stats and everything, and I compliment Mr. Hatcher on bringing some facts, which very few of you did. He brought facts, and I liked his printout and what he had to say. I think 2,500 is a little small. I think we can get bigger than that and still fit it in sort of the footprint that's there now, which I like. I don't like a building that takes up that whole peninsula, and that's the drawing that the Hammock Community Association has put forward, that it would take up that whole thing. I don't like that. I don't think that's a good idea. But I think there's a compromise here we can reach and move forward. I think the issue on the lease, I think we all agree that there's some things that have to be changed in there. For instance, we don't want dedicated boat slips. We've been wanting to put boat slips at that end for years, because right now it accommodates one boat and a kayak launch, and that's it. So we want to retain the kayak launch but add 4 slips. So that's been in the works for a long time, and Captains has never said that they wanted control over those slips. So that was, matter of fact, I thought that was out of the lease. I thought that I had that out of the previous lease. So I think if we can reach a consensus here, I think there's a way to maybe start this ball down the court, down moving.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
My problem with making a decision, I know I have a motion that would make a decision today, but it wouldn't suffice what we'd want to do in the way of finalizing something. But my problem is the lease, the revised lease, as we've been presented it, is not available right now because there are changes have to be made to it. So I don't see how I could approve that lease by what I know about it right now. What I have, which is, and I've gone through it. So I have a motion that will end this thing today, but I don't want to come forward with that motion at this point, but I will.
Well, I would like to also weigh in on my thoughts, because I've been silent, just so you all know where I stand. I would support this drawing right here. I would support the building at 2,500 square feet or thereabouts at that same position of where the pavilion is. I would support for the county to build it. I would support us taking back control of the entire situation. And we wouldn't have to change the lease necessarily. We could continue the lease just the way it is, begin the process to build the building, and when it's finished, satisfy the remainder of the lease in this new building that we built. And then in 2026, when the lease is completed, we can decide whether we want to negotiate a new lease or revert the building back to a community function or whatever it's going to be. I like the idea. I don't want to lose a pavilion. I think again, this is a public amenity, and I don't want to lose sight of that. But I also want to say that I do feel since day one that Mr. Goodman and Mr. Herrera have dealt in good faith. I think they're good citizens and good partners in the community, and I don't fault them, for wanting to do the best thing for their business. And I think, unfortunately, they got into a situation where maybe they were working with a county administrator at the time that had different thoughts about how the process should work, and that's not what the consensus of this board is at this time. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. Commissioner Mullins?
Yeah, I would like to say this, and I want to say this for the record. I am honored and glad to be here to make this decision. I know it's tough, and I know I've said many times I don't understand why we're dealing with this. The reason I say that is because this should not be an issue. I don't believe in things like this. I believe in private and public partnerships, but they have to be smart and they have to work well together. I think I have talked very thoroughly to both groups groups have made very reasonable compromises. I'm okay with the size of the building, because I share the same vision. I'd like to see this be a community center. But I think, when I talk to both groups, I've noticed both things. Each of them have a lot of good things to say about each other. It's just the situation is bad. I don't think to go personally here is something that I'm glad we really have stayed away from that for the most part. Both seem to be okay with us building the building. I know money's the issue for us. But it needs to be figured out, as we've done in so many other issues before, like the Sheriff's Op Center and purchases of different things, the building of cottages and things like that. We figured out where to get the money. Private and public partnerships, I believe with the real estate background that I have, we build and they pay. They pay, for the rent. And I don't sense a problem with that. I know there's some details that need to be worked out as far as, some of the details that we're speaking of up here, like the pavilion and different things. But I've heard a lot of compromising in here today, boat slips, liquor, things like that. I think it's time to move forward. And, I know that I was voted on to get up here and solve problems, not to push them around. And I'd like to make a motion that we build the building, but we've got some more details to work out. So I'd like to make a motion that the county takes over the building process of this building, and we work on getting some more details put out.
He's making a motion, so either we second it or, well, you can offer.
I'm open to listening.
I'd like to restate what Commissioner Mullins said, but in a more detailed way.
Okay, I'm open to that.
Okay. I would like to change that motion as follows: that first we attempt to run the current lease out by having the captain remain where he is now, and then have a investigation done to see if for 50% of the current building's value, it can be brought up to standards where it could last for the remainder of the lease. If officially that is not possible, at that point, we would go forward with having the county build the building as has been described. So I would first like to see if we can run the lease out and do it within the 50% limit of fixing the current building. If that's not possible, then we would go forward with trying to build, for the county to build a new building.
I can't say all that, but I would amend it to that. So, can I second that?
Yes, you can second that.
Okay.
Well, really, he should,
Mr. Adid?
for the rule parliamentary, I'm sorry, for the parliamentary rules, he should say he concurs with the amendment.
I apologize, yes.
No, it's all right, it's all right.
Yeah, okay,
I concur with the amendment.
okay. We have discussion on this motion. We have a motion and a second, correct?
Correct.
So, any other discussion?
Question, I thought the existing building was something like 4,400 square feet. Am I incorrect with that? So this would be a reduction of significant size?
He's not making a motion to.
No, I'm just saying, but I meant what we're approving is, just from my understanding, is 2,500 square feet. If
That's not part of the motion,
Okay.
Commissioner. The motion is.
Yeah, I think we take it over, get this thing built, verify that the building is what the issue is. We take it over, get it built, and then we can work the details out here pretty quick.
But that isn't what the amended motion is.
Yeah.
That's not the amended motion.
Restate the motion, please, so Commissioner Erickson is clear.
Okay, I'm saying
like
that.
you were clear either.
I thought I was clear. The motion would be, first, we would continue with the current lease. Under that lease, we would attempt, if possible, to make the current restaurant usable for the remainder of the lease. If that cannot be done, and it would have to be verified in writing. If that cannot be done for 50% of the current building's value, which is a foggy number also, then the county would, at that point, plan to build a building to replace that unit.
So he's not delineating any size.
Any size, right? Well, as I
Or
said,
ti-
when he
right.
said a building.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So that is the motion, and we have it seconded. Any other questions on the motion?
Can I ask this real quick on that first part? Mr. Cameron, the doubt is in the building currently because of the issues we've had with the other buildings. There's a lot of perception around that this may be a bad inspection. What do you feel with the inspection, and where do you feel? I just don't want to see us postpone this thing more and more. Do you feel like we can get a quick inspection, or do you feel like we need one? What is your take on that?
The motion, as it is stated, gives us the latitude to take the next steps to see if it's at all possible. That may be, me asking for various opinions of the building official, the general services director, construction, maybe some outside advice, maybe a consultant. But if at all possible, we will make the building live out the lease. If that is not possible, then we will do a design that best suits the county's needs going forward, whether they be for a barbecue restaurant or something else. As that motion is stated, I think it gives me clear direction. I think it gives me the necessary latitudes, and I would take very seriously trying to make the existing facility live out. But if that can't be done, then resort to construction, and at that point, those plans would have to come back before this board for final approval as to what we were going to be constructing.
Would it be fair to give a deadline on that inspection? Because I feel like I don't want to see us drag this out anymore.
How would 2 weeks work for you, Commissioner?
I second that.
Okay, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. Next item is we don't have any public hearings. We'll go to additional reports and comments. County Administrator report comments.
Would
You want to just
would
give
you
it
like
30?
to hold until after the budget meeting, because I may generate some?
Sir, I think I'd rather finish this meeting in entirety, if that's okay.
Okay, that
Is
would
that
be
what,
fine.
you can still bring stuff up during the budget workshop, so.
That will be fine, sir. Two things quickly. I have spoken with some of you with regard to RFPs. We are going to do some RFPs for our health insurance coverage. Also intend to go out for RFP on our lobbyist in Tallahassee to just see what we're going to come up there. We may identify some more. We feel like it's important that these things be revisited on a period not to exceed 5 years. So just unless I had direction for otherwise, that would be the direction I'd take on at least two of those items. With regard to some of the confusion that takes place in us trying to get the chair's attention at these meetings, and it makes it very awkward for interruption, I have instructed the IT folks to look into getting cue lights that would be available for commissioners and the chair to see who's in line, keep their order in line. It's very reasonable cost to get that, and we will be working toward installing that. It will probably be on an electronic device for you, but it will show who's up and who's next, and we won't have to shout across the room to interrupt you.
I would prefer that you wait until November and then get an electronic cattle prod on this chair. Exactly, November.
But just wanted you to know that that's underway. I think that will make our meetings certainly look more professional, because you'll know which commissioner has something in what order that they should speak, as well as the county attorney, and I can alert you without having to shout at you.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay.
It's true. We on this side, we cannot see Mr. Hadid at all.
Yes.
So even if he's raising his hand.
Yeah, you would have it, and you would know exactly where people were in the queue, and if the county attorney's light suddenly lights up, you would know that he had something germane at that moment.
Okay.
This is approximately 100 days since I have been here, and I was just going to give you a quick update. We have accomplished a few things. One is we have a permanent solution to the sheriff's situation without the necessity of raising your ad valorem taxes. We have a solution to the Plantation Bay, which is on as fast a track as we can get it. After careful financial analysis, we believe that can be done without any increase in the rates out there, and will substantially improve the quality of the water. Some of the things we've done are already in improving some of the quality of water out there. As of a few minutes ago, we have put the Bings issue to rest. Those were your three big issues when I first got here, and once we get the deck cleared on that, there is a number of other things that we can do. We're also in the process of reorganizing admin to allow it to grow in a natural way as we experience the growth that's coming to the county. We want to have a succession plan. We don't want you to be faced with having to go outside again for your leadership. To that end, we are implementing a leadership academy that will be coming before you also as in a report as to where we stand on that. But it's going to be an aggressive development of staff. We plan to present you with a budget, and hopefully after the instruction I've gotten on Bings, we will still be able to provide you with a millage reduction in that budget, hopefully. We want to be very financially responsible. We want to build our reserves back up and have a budget that is not constantly strained. We're working toward that. One of the great things that I think is happening is we're drawing closer to municipalities, and we've got a lot of joint efforts going on with them. We're meeting the city managers and myself once a month now, and putting that out there. We've got some opportunities that we see for working together, particularly with regard to joint planning, and joint planning is going to be very important as growth happens here, and people try to play one jurisdiction against another where that growth is occurring, but we got a very favorable relationship there. Due to the relationship that we're now enjoying with Palm Coast, we were able to address the Waste Pro issue, and while it may not be quite perfect, it is greatly improved based on the number of complaints that we're getting, and they have been very responsive every time we got a complaint. to handle it within a couple of days. So those are exciting things that have happened in the first 100 days. We've got the runway cleared so that we can take care of the really important businesses coming. We still need a short-term solution for the sheriff. I have been working with Mr. Hadid, and I hope he will give you an update as to the situation with regard to the courthouse and where we stand with the clerk in that situation. We need a pretty substantial revision of our land development regulations in order to accommodate what's coming down the pipe. One of our biggest challenges is going to be fire services. That is way behind, and we need to bring that up to speed. We're going to have to figure out the financing on that. It is not practical to continue to try to finance that solely out of general fund. Growth's going to be your big issue, and affordable housing is another issue that we're going to work on in a number of different ways, and we're going to try to work with the other jurisdictions. I'm sure y'all be able to add some things to that list, but that's what we've identified that we'll be working on since we've taken care of most of the major issues.
Could you just comment, what's your schedule on that RFP for the healthcare plan?
I plan to do that within 30 days.
Okay.
Mr. Cameron, I want to say thank you. I know it's been an eventful last few months, but you guys have done a good job. You and Al together seem to be working really well. Very proud to work with you, and you won't hear that coming from me often, Mr. South Carolina. As far as affordable housing, I think we're going to have some big announcements about some housing coming up here real soon.
Yeah, we've got a lot of pretty bright things on the horizon. Some of them can't be talked about at this point because of confidentiality issues, but staff is performing very well. You will run into in any organization a few instances where somebody is just not a great fit for the organization or doesn't want to adhere to the standards of the organization, and we have to deal with that. But you're very fortunate, and you've got a great staff, and I've really enjoyed working with them. I've worked well with the county attorney. I can't fault anybody out there, and I appreciate you presenting me with so many unique opportunities. It's been a challenge, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Just quick comments on his comment. Okay, I don't need answers for this right now, but add to your list the financial software system schedule, where we are on that. Number two, where we are on the 800 megahertz system implementation. And the last, where are we on the pedestrian bike crossing over Route 100?
We will have that report for you at the next meeting.
Can I add one more to that list?
Sure.
I guess an update of the existing sheriff's operations building, the vacant building, and you know when we expect the final report. I'm not sure of a timeline of where we stand on that.
Well, neither are we.
Yeah.
And it's going to depend on getting some information back from the CDC, but we will add that to the list to see if we can get you something more definitive. This would be a good time for me to answer one of the questions that came up about a letter to the governor with regard to the roundabout. And that issue actually came up in here in November, and apparently there's not anything been acted on since then. We will see what we can do to remediate that. However, there was a very strong letter sent out by Commissioner Hanson in his chair to the DOT that was copied to the governor's office to then Rick Scott. So the governor's office as well as the DOT has got a pretty emphatic idea of what our position is with regard to that. That was a pretty strong letter that Commissioner Hanson sent.
I want to say this too. June 10th, we've got FDOT at the table. Their comment to me was they are open to listening to all possibilities. That's why they're coming. So I think I think we got to welcome them here and speak to them and just kind of see what their thoughts are on it. It is an intersection that needs attention.
It definitely does, and we're doing some things on the lighting. I've talked the caution lighting and rumble strips and so forth. I've talked with Faith some on that. I can add that to the list for an update too, and it's. I sympathize with some of the folks that come before you that are really frustrated because not being in government, they don't realize the obstacles that we face when we have to work with other agencies, particularly superior agencies, and we're kind of at their mercy on responses. We aggravate them as much as we think we can without damaging the relationship, but it's the general public just would have no reason to know the obstacles that we have to circumvent in order to get information or to get things done when you're working with other agencies.
Can I ask you this too, Mr. Cameron? The playground equipment out there, is there any way we can get the older playground equipment back or something there to take it all? It's definitely affected the community and what they use it for, and that is a very passionate group out there that seems like an easy thing to fix.
The problem is that playground equipment has become highly litigious in recent years, and if it doesn't meet specifications, you need to take it out. And if you put it back in, you would compound your exposure. What I can do is I can get a budget amendment proposal and bring it to you at the next meeting.
Be nice to see that if you could.
Is that the consensus of the board?
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, could we make sure Ms. Cody gets a copy of that letter?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I can get a copy too for this meeting.
Do I have a consensus on bringing a budget budget amendment in on the playground?
Bring anything you want, doesn't mean we're going to vote for it.
Well,
How about it?
I just don't want to bring budget amendments in without you folks at least wanting to look at them.
Yeah, I would support that for the playground.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I would too.
Thank you.
Mr. Hadid? Trying to get through this.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. It caught me a little bit. Well, first, thank you very much for bearing with me today and the explanations and whatever statements I made. Second, I kind of want to piggyback, if I may. I didn't know that he was going to do a 100-day report. It's very appropriate, and I'm sure you know from interacting with me that we very much enjoy working with Mr. Cameron to try to deal with just unbelievably thorny problems. I know I don't need to describe them to you, but it raises a whole nother point. You recall that when we retained Mr. Cameron, we selected him, we were thinking of a very short-term caretaker. And we were going to pursue hiring a permanent person. And the board has come to recognize that that is not the wisest choice going forward. Now, to bring anyone else in at this time, or even in the near foreseeable future, would be pretty much unthinkable given the tremendous complexity. I know he talks about them as opportunities, but I know that you know that they present huge managerial, legal, and financial challenges. So that changes the duration of his view as being an interim administrator. He's not here to be the permanent administrator. So in our contract, it talks about him as being, I don't even remember what it said, 90 days, 180 days. I don't remember what time was specifically referenced, but I'm going to be bringing back an amendment to you so that we're staying compliant with the law and updated on our facts. So that'll probably be the next meeting, just to let you know. Nothing else unless any of you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Anything for commission action? Commissioner Erickson?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I've been working with the veterans groups here, and there's a movement. They tried once to get I-95 designated as Purple Heart Highway, and they've given me a draft letter that they would like us to support them, the Purple Heart organization. I told them that I thought there would be no problem doing that. They would like a letter signed by all 5 of us. I have a draft letter that if everybody's in agreement, I'll give that to staff, and we'll get it written up for all of us to sign and try to, in support of the Purple Heart Highway.
I support that.
Agree.
Yep.
Agree.
Agree.
All right, I'll get the draft to
Great.
Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, sir. Anything else for actions?
No, that's it.
Nothing from me.
Commissioner Mullins? Action?
Nothing. No action.
Okay, and no actions for me. All right.
Had enough.
Community outreach, again, this is a 30-minute time period allocated for public comment for items not on the agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium and identify themselves. And Mr. Mayor, let me thank you for following the rules. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. George Mayo, good afternoon again. Commissioner Mullins, I know you just said you're going to meet with the FDOT about the roundabout out there at Cody's Corner. Let me just say, having attended the past FDOT talks about the roundabout on US 1 and Old Dixie Highway, they said they were open ears and open to suggestions, and if I'm correct, I stayed the whole meeting. I did not hear one person, including commissioners, speak in favor of the roundabout, but instead have a traffic signal. And it seemed like the press release, just about as soon as it let out, next day in the paper was, we're putting up a roundabout. So I hear them saying we're open all ears and open for suggestions. I suggest you come with bells and cymbals to try and get their attention. I hope it will do some good. Going through that intersection, Cody's Corner does not need a roundabout. A full-way stoplight would be appreciated and be helpful, and I think that's all they would need. But on that narrow of a road and with the trucks and everything else going through there, they don't need a roundabout there. So let me just suggest that you do something to really catch their attention, and I hope everybody does so too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. Anybody else for community outreach? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close the community outreach portion of our agenda. And one last time back on commission comments and reports. Commissioner Erickson?
Nothing.
Commissioner Hanson?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I've just got a couple of
Take it
announcements.
by you, could I?
Yep. You're trying to get by me.
I was trying.
A couple of just announcements to share with you guys. Again, the meeting Monday, June 10th at Hall Creek with the FDOT. And George, I love to battle, so I'm looking forward to it. So we're going to, and that group out there is not an easy group, so they're going to be pretty aggressive. Thursday, June 20th, there is another town hall meeting that we're doing at African American Cultural Society. That's at 6 p.m., and it's going to be out there out on US 1. And then Public Safety Coordinating Council is June 12th, and that's 8:45 a.m., and it's a regular meeting, and we'll be talking about the upcoming hurricane season and what EOC's doing or needs, and then also some updates from the task force, the suicide, the homelessness, and the opioid to see how we're progressing there. So those meetings are for the public, and would love for you guys to attend if you can, and that's all I got so far.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just, I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Cameron, on the existing ops building, sheriff's ops building, just at least a synopsis of where we're at, because I sometimes am confused about what reports we're still waiting for. I know it's CDC, and maybe a timeline of what we've already gotten and how long it's been since the last report. So just a revisit of the situation, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yes, sir, we will certainly do that. And one of the other things I might be able to close the loop on here, the letter from Commissioner Hanson to DEP and the DOT and the copy to the governor. Would you like me to forward that letter to the new administration in Tallahassee and state to them that our position continues to be the same? And the board has reconfirmed that position?
I just quickly, I remember a lot of this, and I think maybe a new letter will have more impact than just forwarding what's already been written. You might attach what was written previously to a new letter.
That would be what we would do, is
Yeah.
send a copy and just tell them that our position remains the same and that you have reconfirmed in
Was
a
that
public
letter on
hearing.
Cody's Corner?
Yes.
Okay, because we also had that sheriff's letter on the Route 1 that's already, of course, didn't. Okay.
Okay,
We had the chamber letter also on the Route 1. Yeah.
I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Can we have just 5 minutes before we reconvene the budget workshop, please? Thank you. 6 minutes.